It started with a whisper, a quiet murmur on the Toronto set of a show that would one day launch a princess. "She's not the same anymore," someone said between takes. The crew laughed nervously, thinking it was just stress, maybe fatigue. But that whisper would grow into something louder, darker, and impossible to ignore. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Because before Meghan Markle became the Duchess of Sussex, before palaces, paparazzi, and royal titles, she was Rachel Zane, the ambitious paralegal everyone rooted for in the hit TV series Suits. She was loved, she was admired, and according to one man, she was hiding something none of them saw coming. That man was Wendell Pierce, Meghan's on-screen father, the man who once called her daughter both on and off the set. And now, after years of silence, he's finally telling the truth about what really happened behind those studio doors. You think you know Meghan Markle? Wait until you hear what her dad has to say, because his words aren't the sugar-coated kind you've read in glossy magazines. They're raw, they're emotional, and they paint a picture of a woman whose charm could melt a camera, but freeze a room the moment it stopped rolling. So buckle up, because this isn't another royal headline. This is a story about ambition, power, and the kind of fame that doesn't just change people, it exposes them. It's about the actress who once smiled for the world, while quietly fighting everyone who got in her way. Let's rewind to where it all began. Toronto, 2011. The Suits pilot had just wrapped. The show was fresh, sharp, and full of chemistry. The cast bonded quickly. Gabriel Macht, Patrick J. Adams, Sarah Rafferty, Gina Torres, and Meghan Markle. She was radiant, magnetic, and eager to prove herself. She called everyone by name, brought coffee for the crew, laughed between takes. She was the kind of colleague you wanted to root for. She was genuine back then, Wendell Pierce once said in an interview years later, his voice filled with a mix of nostalgia and disappointment. "I really thought of her as a daughter. I watched her grow, learn, and step into her role with confidence. But something changed. Changed how? What happened between those bright early days and the explosive stories that later followed her into Buckingham Palace? That's the question that's haunted Wendell Pierce ever since he decided to break his silence. According to those who were there, it didn't happen overnight. The shift was gradual, like watching a slow eclipse, light fading until all that was left was shadow. At first, she was a perfectionist, rehearsing lines until midnight, insisting on retakes to get emotional scenes just right. Admirable, right? But then, it became something else. A kind of obsession with control. She began correcting the director, interrupting co-stars midline, demanding rewrites of dialogue that didn't sound royal enough. Long before she ever met Prince Harry, the word royal had already begun to roll off her tongue. One crew member recalled her saying, "You'll all see me somewhere bigger than this one day." They laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. But before all that, before the friction and the fame, there was Wendell Pierce, her mentor, her on-screen father, the man who defended her when others rolled their eyes. He remembered her coming to him before a big courtroom scene, nervous but eager. "You've got this," he told her. "You just have to be real." She smiled and said, "Real is easy when the camera's on." Pierce didn't think much of it then. But looking back, he said that line never left him. It was the first glimpse of something, he admitted quietly. Something calculated. Still, in those first few years, no one could deny her star power. Suits was on fire, and so was Meghan. The network loved her, the audience adored her, and every photo of her on red carpets lit up social media. She was living the dream, but the dream had cracks. Behind the glamour, things weren't so picture-perfect. Rumors began to surface. Whispers of tension with co-stars, disputes over wardrobe, clashes with makeup artists. One insider described her as a perfectionist with no patience. She wanted control of everything: lighting, camera angles, even other actors' dialogue delivery, a crew member once said. It wasn't about collaboration anymore. It was about her. At first, the cast brushed it off as ambition. After all, in Hollywood, ambition is survival. But ambition, when mixed with ego, can turn toxic fast. And according to Wendell Pierce, that's exactly what happened. She became harder to reach, he recalled. Conversations felt rehearsed, like she was already preparing for a bigger stage. That bigger stage of course, would arrive soon, wrapped in royal tradition and global attention. But before she ever met Prince Harry, before she ever wore a tiara or sat for Oprah, Meghan Markle was already building the persona that would one day divide the world. And for the people who worked with her, that transformation was impossible to ignore. It began subtly, a mist-cast dinner here, a skipped wrap party there. Then came the new entourage, assistants who spoke for her, stylists who demanded private dressing rooms. Patrick J. Adams once joked during an interview that Meghan didn't like being told what to do, even by the director. Everyone laughed, but those who knew the truth didn't, because that wasn't a joke. It was a warning. The tension on set grew thicker with every season. The cheerful atmosphere that once filled the Suits studio began to vanish. People stopped making eye contact. Conversations grew cautious. And Wendell Pierce, the man who had always stood by her, started to feel the strain. "She was family to me," he said. "But family doesn't act like that." When asked what that meant, Pierce hesitated. Then he said, "She fought with everyone. If she didn't get her way, she'd find someone to blame." It wasn't about art anymore. It was about image. Still, he didn't give up on her. "I thought maybe it was just pressure," he explained. "We were shooting long hours, and she was in almost every scene. Anyone could crack under that. But this wasn't cracking. It was something more deliberate, something cold." The breaking point came during one of the show's most emotional storylines, the one where Rachel Zane finally stands up to her father. The scene was raw, powerful, and deeply personal. Pierce said it was supposed to be the kind of moment actors live for. But when the cameras stopped rolling, Meghan didn't thank him for the scene. She didn't smile. She didn't even look at him. Instead, she said, "Next time, don't try to steal my spotlight." Pierce later described that moment as the day I realized I'd lost her. The crew pretended not to notice, but the air on set changed that day. What used to be warm became brittle. What used to be laughter became silence. She started seeing herself as the show, one insider said. Not part of the cast, the whole thing. And when news of her royal relationship broke, everything exploded. The production team had been told to keep quiet, but word spread fast. Meghan Markle was dating Prince Harry. The fairy tale had begun, but for those still working beside her, it was a nightmare. Everything changed overnight, Pierce said. The attention, the security, the rules. Suddenly, we couldn't talk about her, couldn't even say her name in interviews without approval. Crew members started calling her, "Your Grace," as a joke. But even that joke didn't last long. She didn't like it, one actor admitted. She said we needed to respect her privacy, but she'd show up with paparazzi waiting outside. Contradiction became the new normal, and Pierce watched it all unfold like a father helplessly watching his daughter lose her way. "I tried to reach out," he said. Tried to remind her where she came from, what mattered. But she'd already left us, long before she left the show. When Meghan finally announced her departure from Suits, the cast celebrated her engagement on social media, but insiders say there was relief behind the smiles. She wasn't coming back, one crew member said bluntly. And honestly, no one wanted her to. Still, Pierce remained silent. Out of loyalty, out of love, out of hope that maybe she'd remember who she used to be. But silence has a breaking point. And years later, when he saw headlines accusing Meghan of bullying palace staff, when he heard familiar words like difficult, controlling, cold, he couldn't hold back anymore. Because he'd seen it before, and he knew where it started. "This isn't about hate," he said quietly. "It's about truth." For Pierce, the hardest part wasn't watching her change. It was realizing that she didn't care who got hurt in the process. She was capable of kindness, he said. That's what made it so painful. Because she could be wonderful when she wanted to be. He paused before adding, but it was always an act. The interview ended with a heavy silence. And then Pierce looked directly into the camera and said, "I loved her like a daughter, until she turned on everyone." That sentence hit the entertainment world like a thunderclap. What did he mean by turned on everyone? Who else was caught in the crossfire? Because according to multiple insiders, what happened next would tear the Suits family apart and leave Meghan's reputation forever changed. The stories that began as whispers were about to erupt into something undeniable. The director's outburst, the co-star confrontation, the secret email leaks that nearly shut down production. And through it all, Wendell Pierce standing at the center, watching the girl he once called daughter burn every bridge in her path. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What happens when a man who treated you like his own daughter decides he can't protect you anymore? When loyalty turns to heartbreak, and silence turns into a confession that the world wasn't ready to hear. That's where Wendell Pierce found himself, staring into the eyes of reporters, hesitant, cautious, but no longer afraid to tell the truth. He wasn't just an actor on a hit TV show. He was a witness, a mentor, a father figure who saw the best and worst of Meghan Markle, long before the crown, the chaos, and the controversies. And according to him, the warning signs were there from the start. He said it softly, almost regretfully, but those words carried weight. Because Wendell Pierce wasn't some gossip. He was respected, measured, the kind of man who spoke with purpose. So when he said Meghan's transformation was painful to watch, people listened. But how did it get to that point? How did the woman he called daughter become the center of a storm that no one could stop? Let's rewind to those early Suits days, when Pierce first met her. He remembered it clearly. The day she walked onto the set, radiant, polite, perfectly rehearsed. She was charming, he said. She had that thing. You know, the spark you can't fake. And she did. Meghan had presence. She didn't just enter a room. She filled it. People noticed. Pierce took to her instantly. He was older, seasoned, the veteran actor in a cast of rising stars. He saw something in Meghan, a hunger to learn, a spark of ambition that reminded him of his younger self. He decided to guide her. She was like a sponge, he said. She'd ask for advice between takes. How to find truth in a scene. How to make a character feel alive. At first, it was refreshing. She listened. She cared. She wanted to grow. But then, something subtle began to change. She stopped asking, Pierce recalled, and started telling. It began small, adjusting lines, debating emotional beats, questioning direction. Pierce thought it was confidence at first. Then came the tone shifts. The dismissiveness. The quiet glances that told everyone she believed she was the smartest person in the room. Still, he brushed it off. Actors evolve, he thought. She's finding her voice. But this wasn't just voice. It was control. She wanted everything to go through her, said a crew member who worked on multiple seasons. Lighting, camera angles, wardrobe. She had an opinion on everything. And if it didn't match hers, she'd fight it. Pierce began noticing it too. Once, during a heated courtroom scene, the director asked Meghan to soften her tone, to show vulnerability. She paused, smiled tightly, and said, Rachel Zane doesn't do vulnerable. She wins. It was a good line, but it wasn't in the script. And when the director tried to move on, she pushed back harder. Pierce tried to intervene. Hey, let's give it one more take the way it's written, he said, keeping his voice calm, fatherly. She didn't look at him. She looked through him. That's when I realized, he said later. She didn't need a father figure anymore. She thought she was the director. Was it ego? Insecurity? Or something else entirely? That's what Pierce would spend years asking himself. The more famous Suits became, the more distant Meghan grew. The woman who once stayed after filming to chat with crew members now left the second her scene wrapped. The actress who used to thank wardrobe staff now sent assistants to do it for her. One crew member remembered her saying, I'm too busy to make small talk. Those words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they weren't the Meghan they knew. And Wendell Pierce felt it most of all. She started calling me Wendell instead of Dad, he said with a sad laugh. It sounds silly, but it meant something. It meant that closeness, that trust, was gone. He remembered one particular day on set. They were shooting an emotional confrontation scene. Pierce wanted to create an authentic moment, so he reached out to her before cameras rolled and said, Let's make this real. Let's forget the lines and just talk. Meghan looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, Let's just do it my way. That was the turning point. After that, every scene felt colder. The chemistry they once shared evaporated. Crew members whispered that Pierce was too patient with her, that he was being taken advantage of. But he refused to give up. I thought maybe it was stress, he said. Fame messes with people. I thought it would pass. But it didn't pass. It grew, especially after her relationship with Prince Harry became public. From that moment, the energy on set shifted entirely. She was suddenly untouchable, one producer recalled. Her team from London started showing up. She had a new PR handler, New rules, new attitude. You could feel the distance. Pierce tried to talk to her privately. I told her, don't lose yourself in this. The industry, the fame, it can eat you alive. She smiled and said, I know who I am. But the next day, she arrived with a royal security escort and refused to sit with the rest of the cast at lunch. The crew tried to laugh it off. Maybe she's just nervous, they said. She's under pressure. But Wendell Pierce saw something different. She was building walls, he said. Not just around herself, but between herself and everyone who cared about her. And once those walls went up, no one could reach her. There was a scene late in her final season that mirrored their real relationship. Rachel Zane, his daughter on screen, was confronting her father. She accused him of not believing in her, not trusting her choices. The lines hit too close to home. Pierce said when the cameras stopped, he felt tears in his eyes, not because of the scene, but because he realized the fiction had become reality. I believed in her, he said quietly. I just didn't believe what she'd become. After the scene wrapped, Meghan walked away without a word. The next day, he found out she had requested fewer joint scenes with him in future episodes. No explanation. No goodbye. The man who had stood by her for 7 seasons was suddenly invisible. Still, Pierce kept his silence. He attended her wedding. He smiled in interviews. He defended her when tabloids painted her as difficult. Because that's what fathers do, he said. They protect their kids, even when their kids don't deserve it. But silence can be heavy. And the weight of that silence began to crush him as more stories surfaced, stories that sounded all too familiar. Palace aides quitting, staff crying, allegations of bullying. He recognized every pattern, every line, every tone. It was déjà vu, he admitted. Only now, the whole world was watching. So what made him speak up after all these years? Why now? Because sometimes truth doesn't fade. It festers. Pierce was doing an interview for a charity project when a journalist asked casually, what was it like working with Meghan Markle? He smiled politely at first. Then, something broke through the mask. It was wonderful, he began, then paused. Until it wasn't. The interviewer leaned forward. What do you mean? And that's when Wendell Pierce finally said it. She fights with everyone. Everyone who tries to help her ends up hurt. It wasn't said in anger. It was said with sorrow. She's not evil, he continued. She's just lost. She confuses control with strength and isolation with independence. Those words made headlines overnight. Fans were divided. Some furious, some shocked, others saying, we knew it. But for Pierce, it wasn't about fame or gossip. It was about honesty. You can't heal what you won't face, he said. And Meghan never faced herself. He described her as brilliant, beautiful, and broken, all at once. And yet, even in his disappointment, there was love. I'll always care for her, he said. I just wish she cared for others the same way. The saddest part? He said he still kept her number in his phone, though he knew she'd never answer. It's like keeping an old photo, he said. You know it's over, but you can't delete it. Pierce's confession reopened old wounds within the Suits family. Cast members began to whisper again, not about the past, but about the truth finally coming out. Because as it turns out, Wendell Pierce wasn't the only one who had stories to tell. There were others, actors, producers, and crew members, who'd kept quiet out of fear, out of loyalty, or simply because they thought no one would believe them. But now, with Wendell breaking the silence, the floodgates were opening. And the next person to speak would reveal something that shocked even Pierce himself. A confrontation so intense it nearly ended the show altogether. It involved Meghan. It involved her co-star Patrick J. Adams. And it left the set of Suits changed forever. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. When Meghan Markle first joined Suits, she was the heart of the cast. The grounded one. The sweet one. She wasn't the loudest, the funniest, or the flashiest, but she had a glow. A quiet confidence that made people root for her. She remembered birthdays. She hugged everyone at wrap parties. She called crew members by their first names, even the ones others overlooked. She was sunshine, one lighting tech recalled. Always smiling, always grateful. We used to joke that she could talk a storm into calming down. But as Suits climbed the charts and Meghan's name started trending online, that sunshine began to flicker. It wasn't sudden. It was subtle. A late arrival here. A whispered argument there. The kind of small moments people ignored because they didn't want to believe the change they were seeing. Wendell Pierce saw it first. He had a father's intuition about her moods. She started coming to set later than usual, he said. Nothing dramatic at first, just a few minutes off. But it kept happening. And when she did arrive, the warmth was gone. She didn't greet people anymore. She went straight to her trailer. At first, people excused it: pressure, exhaustion, fame. But then the requests started. A bigger dressing room. A different chair. A personal stylist flown in from LA. And then, her own on-set assistant, separate from the one assigned to the cast. It was as if the Meghan who once sat with everyone at lunch suddenly decided she didn't need company anymore. She had this glow up, a production assistant said. She was gorgeous, famous, and she knew it. But something shifted, like she started believing her own PR. It was that phrase, believing her own PR, that Wendell Pierce used when reflecting on her transformation. There's confidence, he said, and then there's arrogance disguised as purpose. But to understand that transformation, you have to understand what Suits meant at that time. It wasn't just a show, it was a family. The cast was unusually close. They spent birthdays together, vacations even. The crew celebrated milestones with champagne and laughter. It was a rare kind of harmony in an industry built on ego. And Meghan was part of that heartbeat. She and Patrick J. Adams, her on-screen love interest, had electric chemistry. Their scenes were the emotional core of the show. Fans adored them. Magazines called them TV's classiest couple. But that chemistry didn't always extend off camera. Behind the smiles, tension was brewing. And it started, as many Hollywood rifts do, with credit. As Meghan's popularity skyrocketed, promotional posters began featuring her face more prominently. She started landing solo interviews, fashion shoots, charity features. And while most of the cast cheered her on publicly, the whispers behind closed doors grew louder. She started saying things like, "The show needs a female lead," one co-star admitted anonymously, as if it hadn't been an ensemble from the start. Patrick, who had always been protective of her, began noticing small changes too. She corrected his lines in rehearsals, interrupted his feedback. It wasn't malicious, a director said. It was dismissive, like she thought she knew better. And Wendell Pierce, ever the father figure, tried to step in before it got worse. I told her, "You're the glue here. Don't forget that humility is power." She smiled sweetly and said, "Humility doesn't get headlines." It was a clever line, maybe even a joke. But the way she said it, dead serious, made him uneasy. And from that day, it wasn't just the audience who saw her as the star. Meghan saw it too. Her trailer became a fortress. Her assistants screened calls. Even producers had to book time to talk to her. The set began to shift around her presence, like planets orbiting a new sun. Some adapted, others resented it. But Wendell Pierce? He worried. She started saying "my show" instead of "our show," he said. That's when I knew the balance was gone. One afternoon, during a table read, things came to a head. Meghan was unhappy with the new script. She said her character's dialogue made her look weak. The room went quiet. The writers, who had spent weeks crafting the episode, tried to explain the arc. Meghan wasn't having it. "This isn't Rachel," she said. "Rachel doesn't cry. She conquers." Patrick tried to diffuse the tension. "It's just one scene, Meg. It shows growth." She turned to him, eyes cold. "Maybe you don't understand what growth looks like." The air froze. Wendell Pierce, sitting nearby, tried to lighten the mood with a chuckle. "Easy now," he said softly. But Meghan shot back, "You wouldn't get it either. You're not the one they'll criticize if this falls flat." The room went silent. Everyone knew she had crossed a line. Wendell said nothing more. He just closed his script and sat back, realizing the daughter he once guided had slipped away. Afterward, crew members whispered that something had broken that day. "She stopped being one of us," one said. "She became untouchable." And once you become untouchable in Hollywood, you also become unpredictable. Her requests became demands. Her tone with staff turned sharper. She started arriving with bodyguards, even though no one else had them. The irony? Meghan had always preached kindness. She gave motivational speeches, championed charity causes, and posted quotes about compassion on social media. But on set, those same words began to feel hollow. She'd post a quote about love and then yell at a PA for bringing almond milk instead of oat, one crew member said. It was confusing. The contradiction became impossible to ignore. And for Wendell Pierce, it became unbearable. She was spiraling, and no one could stop her, he said. Fame is like a drug. You start needing more attention, more control, more validation. And she was addicted. By season 6, the dynamic had shifted completely. The showrunners began catering to her image. Entire plot lines were rewritten to suit her preferences. When she didn't like a director, he was quietly replaced. It was power, Pierce said. Raw, unfiltered power. And it changes people. He paused during his interview, his eyes clouding with memory. She forgot who she was. That's the tragedy of it. The girl who once hugged the crew started looking at them like they were servants. And yet, there was something else beneath the surface, something more human than cruel. Pierce noticed it during late-night shoots, when she thought no one was watching. Between takes, Meghan would stare into space, her hands trembling slightly. She wasn't happy, he said. That's what people don't understand. She wasn't a villain, she was lost. He described it as the loneliness of ambition. When everyone wants something from you, who do you trust? When your life becomes performance, where does the real you go? He tried once more to reach her. You don't have to prove anything, he told her during a quiet moment on set. She looked at him and said, You don't get it, Wendell. I'm running out of time. He never asked what she meant. But years later, when she was walking down the aisle at St. George's Chapel, he remembered that line. I'm running out of time. And he finally understood. It wasn't about career. It was about transformation, reinvention. Meghan wasn't just acting anymore. She was building a brand. She wasn't playing Rachel Zane. She was rehearsing for the role of her life. That realization haunted Pierce, because it meant that everything, the kindness, the charm, even the tears, had become part of the script. She stopped being Meghan the actress, he said. She became Meghan the idea. And once that happened, there was no going back. The sweet, eager woman who once called him dad was gone, replaced by someone who believed she didn't need anyone. Not co-stars, not crew, not even the people who loved her. But Pierce wasn't the only one who saw the shift. Patrick J. Adams, her on-screen fiancé and real-life friend, had reached his limit too. Their chemistry was undeniable. But off-screen, their relationship was fracturing. And one explosive confrontation would expose just how deep the cracks had gone. It started with a single line of dialogue and ended with shouting so loud, the entire studio froze. And when the truth came out, even Wendell Pierce was speechless. Because the woman he thought he knew wasn't there anymore. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Sometimes, chemistry burns too bright. The spark that makes a performance unforgettable can also destroy the people behind it. That's exactly what happened between Meghan Markle and Patrick J. Adams, the dynamic duo who played Rachel Zane and Mike Ross, the couple everyone rooted for on Suits. On screen, their love story was the emotional heartbeat of the show. Off-screen, it became the flashpoint of tension that nearly tore the set apart. So, what really happened between Meghan and Patrick? It started, as most Hollywood clashes do, with admiration. Patrick was a respected actor, humble and grounded. Meghan looked up to him. In the early days, they were inseparable, laughing between takes, running lines late into the night, sharing jokes no one else understood. Wendell Pierce once described their relationship as two kids trying to make magic. But somewhere between season 4 and 5, that magic turned volatile. Patrick noticed it first, the distance, the clipped tone, the way she started correcting him during scenes. She had ideas, he once said diplomatically in an interview. But those ideas often came at his expense. It began with creative disagreements. Meghan wanted her character to be more assertive. Patrick believed in vulnerability. The tension between their interpretations grew with each episode. And one afternoon, during a particularly emotional rehearsal, everything boiled over. The scene was simple. Mike and Rachel were supposed to argue, then reconcile with a kiss. The kind of moment fans adored, the push and pull, the emotional payoff. But when Patrick tried to improvise a softer line, Meghan stopped mid-sentence and broke character. That's not what I agreed to, she said flatly. Patrick blinked, confused. I'm just trying something new. It feels more real. Meghan shook her head. No, it makes Rachel look weak. The director, sensing tension, tried to intervene. Let's take it again, both options. We can decide in editing. But Meghan refused. No, I won't do it that way. The air went cold. Patrick's jaw tightened, but he forced a smile. Fine. Your way. They finished the scene, but something broke that day. Something invisible but deep. Afterward, Patrick confided in Wendell Pierce. I don't know what's going on with her, he said quietly. It's like she's fighting everyone. Pierce sighed, knowing exactly what he meant. She's changing, he said, and not for the better. The crew began noticing it too. Meghan and Patrick, once inseparable, now kept their distance. Their laughter was gone, replaced by polite nods and scripted small talk. They only spoke when cameras were rolling. One cameraman described it best. It was like watching a couple fall out of love in real life. Only they had to pretend they hadn't. Still, the show must go on. And it did, until one day, the fight that had been simmering for months finally exploded. It was late, past midnight, and they were shooting a crucial scene. Meghan was exhausted. Patrick was frustrated. The director had asked for one more take, but Meghan wasn't happy with the lighting. It makes my skin look flat, she complained. Patrick, tired and running on caffeine, muttered, We've done this 6 times already. Meghan turned sharply. What's that supposed to mean? He exhaled, trying to stay calm. It means the crew's been here 12 hours. They're exhausted. And I'm not, she shot back. Do you think I don't care about the crew? Patrick stared at her. You used to. The room went silent. Everyone froze. Wendell Pierce, who had been watching from the sidelines, stepped forward. Hey, let's take 5. But Meghan wasn't finished. You're not the director, Patrick, she said coldly. You don't tell me how to do my job. He laughed bitterly. No, I'm the guy who has to act opposite you while you treat everyone like dirt. The crew gasped. Meghan's eyes flashed with anger. Excuse me. You heard me, he said. You think you're the only one who matters here, but this isn't the Meghan Markle show. That was it. She stormed off set, slamming the door behind her. Wendell followed, trying to calm her down, but she wouldn't listen. He disrespected me, she said, pacing. He thinks he's better than me because he's been here longer. I'm not some supporting player he can talk down to. Pierce tried to reason with her. No one's talking down to you. We're just tired, Meghan. You're pushing too hard. Her voice cracked, half rage, half hurt. If I don't push, no one takes me seriously. He saw tears in her eyes for the first time in years. For a brief moment, the wall around her cracked. But then she wiped them away, straightened her posture, and said coldly, I'm done talking about this. She didn't return to set that night. Production was halted. The next morning, the studio called an emergency meeting. It wasn't just about the argument. It was about everything. The tension, the complaints, the crew walkouts. Something had to change. The showrunner summoned both actors into his office. According to someone present, the meeting was tense but calm. Patrick apologized first, saying he was frustrated but never meant to disrespect her. Meghan accepted the apology, but with a caveat. I need to feel safe creatively, she said. And I can if people undermine me. The showrunner agreed to assign a mediator for all future scenes between them. It was a diplomatic solution, but it spoke volumes. From that day on, every scene between Meghan and Patrick had a third person in the room. A silent witness. It was awkward, one director admitted. They were professional, but you could feel the frost. Off camera, things got worse. Meghan stopped attending cast gatherings. She skipped Patrick's birthday. Crew members whispered about her growing isolation. She was surrounded by people, one said. But she was completely alone. And then came the whisper that made everything spiral. A crew member leaked part of the confrontation to the press. Within days, headlines read, Trouble on Suits set, Meghan Markle at odds with co-star. The studio denied it, of course. Patrick even defended her publicly, tweeting, Don't believe everything you read. But inside, everyone knew the truth. Meghan was furious. She blamed Patrick for the leak. You told someone? She accused him one day on set. I didn't, he said firmly. You're paranoid. Then why does it always circle back to you? She snapped. He didn't answer. He just walked away. That night, she sent an email to production requesting that she and Patrick be given minimal off-camera interaction. The memo spread quickly through the studio. It was like a divorce, one assistant said. Everyone had to pick sides. Wendell Pierce refused to pick. They were both hurting, he said later. They just didn't know how to say it. But the damage was done. Their friendship was over. And yet, Here's where the story takes a strange turn. When Meghan announced her engagement to Prince Harry, Patrick was among the first to publicly congratulate her. "She's an incredible woman," he wrote on Instagram. "I'm very happy for her." The post went viral. Fans praised his class. But those who knew what had happened behind the scenes saw something else: closure. A quiet goodbye. Still, the feud left a mark. After that season, everything changed, a producer said. The set wasn't fun anymore. People were cautious, tense. Meghan had become unpredictable. And Wendell Pierce? He tried once more to talk to her before she left for London. "Don't burn bridges you might need to cross again," he warned. She smiled faintly. "Bridges are for people going backward," she said. "I'm not." That was the last real conversation they ever had. Months later, when the royal wedding aired, Patrick was invited, but Wendell wasn't. He watched the ceremony from home. When asked how he felt, he said, "Proud and sad." Because the girl who once cried on his shoulder now belonged to a world where emotions were scripted, smiles rehearsed, and apologies buried under royal protocol. And while the world celebrated her fairy tale ending, those who had seen her rise knew something darker was brewing. Because once you start believing you're untouchable, the fall is never far behind. And that fall was coming. The first cracks would appear not in tabloids or royal headlines, but within the suit's crew itself. Leaked emails, frustrated directors, anonymous testimonies that painted a picture far uglier than anyone expected. And when those messages surfaced, even Wendell Pierce could no longer defend her. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It's one thing when actors fight with each other. That's Hollywood. It happens every day, and everyone moves on. But it's another thing entirely when the crew, the people who make everything possible, begin to break. That's when the cracks stop being invisible. And for the suit set, those cracks started showing faster than anyone expected. By the time Meghan Markle entered her 5th season, she wasn't just an actress. She was an institution. Paparazzi trailed her, fans camped outside the Toronto set, and producers began protecting her like a royal asset. Her face was on posters. Her name brought clicks, and everything she did, even the smallest gestures, rippled far beyond the soundstage. But inside those walls, things were falling apart. At first, it was the little things. She'd refuse to film until her makeup was redone. She'd reject wardrobe options that didn't flatter her silhouette. The crew worked long hours to accommodate her. They told themselves, "She's under pressure. Let's keep her happy." But happiness, they learned, was a moving target. She had a mood for every day, said one lighting tech. Sometimes she'd walk in, cheerful, thanking everyone by name. Other days, she'd ignore you completely. You'd never know which Meghan you were going to get. And as her moods grew unpredictable, the energy on set shifted. Jokes stopped. Conversations died down when she entered the room. People began whispering behind closed doors. She wasn't a diva in the traditional sense, a wardrobe assistant said. She wasn't throwing things. She was cold, sharp. If she didn't like you, she'd make sure you knew it. Wendell Pierce, ever the peacekeeper, tried to keep morale high. He'd bring donuts for the crew, crack jokes between takes, and remind everyone, "We're family, remember?" But the word family had started to lose meaning. The tension reached a peak one humid summer night during a reshoot. The clock ticked past midnight. The crew had been working for over 15 hours, eyes heavy, coffee cups empty. Meghan wasn't happy with the lighting. "It's too harsh," she said. "It makes my eyes look tired." The cinematographer explained gently, "We've matched the lighting from the previous scene. If we change it now, it won't cut together." Meghan's tone turned icy. "Then you should have lit me properly the first time." A silence fell over the room. Cameras stopped. The crew stared at the floor, waiting for someone, anyone, to step in. Wendell Pierce did. "Hey," he said softly, "we're all tired. Let's take a break." But Meghan wasn't done. "No, Wendell. I'm the one who has to look at myself on screen. I'm the one people will judge. You don't get it." He exhaled slowly, hurt flashing in his eyes. "You're right. Maybe I don't." She turned away, leaving the set in silence. After that night, people stopped defending her. The whispers grew louder, more bitter. A camera operator told a friend, "It's like walking on glass. One wrong move and you're gone." And some were. 2 production assistants were quietly reassigned after Meghan allegedly complained about unprofessionalism. No one knew what that meant. They just disappeared. Then came the wardrobe incident, the one that spread through the crew like wildfire. Meghan arrived late one morning for a courtroom scene. Her usual dresser, Maria, greeted her with a garment bag and a smile. "We went with the cream blouse today. It's elegant, understated." Meghan cut her off. "Understated? Rachel Zane doesn't do understated." Maria froze. "I can change it if you want." Meghan sighed. "You shouldn't have to ask. You should know." That was it. No shouting. No tantrum. Just a quiet humiliation delivered in front of 3 assistants. Maria didn't return the next day. The producers told the crew she was on leave, but everyone knew she wasn't coming back. It was moments like that, small but sharp, that built the legend of Meghan Markle's on-set behavior. She didn't explode. She eroded. Slowly, silently. She wore people down until they either adapted or vanished. Wendell Pierce noticed the toll it took. "People stopped looking forward to work," he said. The laughter was gone. The heart of the show was gone. He tried to talk to her again, but she brushed him off. "You worry too much," she said. "This is how the industry works. You either lead or you get left behind." But leadership, he thought, didn't look like this. Leadership didn't make people cry in bathrooms. Leadership didn't turn family into fear. And then came the breaking point. The day one of the crew members walked off the set in tears, and nothing was the same again. It happened during the filming of a pivotal courtroom sequence. The schedule was tight, tensions high. Meghan had been particularly demanding that morning, asking for retakes for the smallest imperfections. "Let's do it again," she said after the 3rd take. The director, exhausted, rubbed his temples. "Meghan, we've got it. It's perfect." She crossed her arms. "It's not. I blinked during the last line." He sighed. "We'll fix it in post." Her voice hardened. "No, we'll fix it now." The crew exchanged weary glances. One of the camera operators, an older man named Joel, who'd worked in television for 30 years, muttered under his breath, "Unbelievable." She heard him. "Excuse me," she said sharply. Joel looked up, startled. "I didn't mean." "Do you think this is funny?" she demanded. "Do you think my work is a joke?" The set froze. Wendell Pierce stood up, his heart pounding. "Meghan, please." But she cut him off. "No, I want to hear him say it. Say it to my face." Joel's hands trembled. "I just meant. We've been here for 16 hours. Everyone's tired." Her tone was ice. "Then maybe you're in the wrong business." The room went silent. Joel set down his camera and walked out. He didn't come back. Later, someone found him sitting alone outside, chain-smoking, eyes red. "I'm done," he said quietly. "I can't do this anymore." The next day, the studio quietly reassigned him to another project. No one talked about it, but everyone remembered it. That was the day the crew broke. After that, even the smallest interactions felt heavy. Laughter was forced. Smiles were masks. People avoided her eyeline, afraid of setting her off. Wendell tried again to mediate, to bring back some peace. He approached her between takes and said softly, "They're scared of you, you know." She frowned. "Good. Maybe they'll start taking me seriously." He stared at her, stunned. "That's not respect, Meghan. That's fear." She looked at him for a moment, just a moment. And for the first time, he saw something flicker behind her eyes. Doubt? Guilt? Maybe both. But then she blinked, smiled faintly, and said, "Fear works faster." That was the last straw for Wendell Pierce. From that day, he stopped trying to protect her. "I couldn't keep making excuses," he said later. Not when people were getting hurt. The next few weeks were a blur of tension and exhaustion. Crew turnover hit an all-time high. New staff came in. Old staff quietly disappeared. The air on set was heavy, electric, like waiting for a storm that everyone knew was coming. And it came. During a closed-door production meeting, the director snapped. "We can't keep working like this," he said, slamming his script on the table. "It's chaos. Every day is a new argument." The showrunner tried to calm him down. "We'll handle it. We can't afford a scandal." But the director wasn't backing down. "We already have one. We're just pretending we don't." The words hung in the air like smoke. And in the corner of that room, Wendell Pierce sat silently, knowing the truth. The set wasn't just broken, it was toxic. And if something didn't change soon, everything they'd built would crumble. Later that evening, as the crew wrapped up another long day, Meghan walked past Wendell on her way out. He wanted to say something, to remind her of who she used to be. But she didn't even look at him. She climbed into her waiting car. The door closed behind her, and for a moment, he thought that was the last time he'd ever see her smile. But he was wrong, because the real explosion hadn't happened yet. A few days later, the director, the same one who had slammed his script in frustration, called an emergency meeting. The cast, the crew, the producers, everyone. And when he walked into that room, his face pale and hands shaking, everyone knew something had gone terribly wrong. He wasn't just angry anymore. He was done. And what he said next would shatter whatever was left of their so-called family. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. You could feel it before he even spoke. The energy in the room had changed. Gone was the forced politeness that had kept everyone functioning through weeks of tension. Now, it was replaced by something sharper, finality. The director, Mark Hastings, wasn't known for outbursts. He'd been in television for over 2 decades, the kind of man who handled chaos with a calm shrug and a quiet, "Let's fix it." But that morning, even his patience had evaporated. He slammed his notebook onto the conference table, startling everyone. "We can't go on like this," he said, his voice steady but seething. Not another day. Around him sat the producers, the assistant directors, and a few senior crew members, tired faces, folded arms, eyes that avoided each other. One of the producers tried to play diplomat. "Mark, let's not make it personal." "It is personal," Mark interrupted. "When half your crew is scared to speak. When people quit in the middle of a shoot. When grown adults start dreading their jobs. That's personal." The silence that followed was thick. He didn't need to say her name. Everyone knew who he was talking about. Meghan. Wendell Pierce sat quietly in the corner, his heart heavy. He'd seen it coming. The tension had been boiling for months, but hearing it spoken out loud made it real. The producer leaned back, sighing. "She's our lead, Mark. The network loves her. We can't just then tell the network they can have her." Mark snapped. "Because I'm done." Everyone froze. The words hung in the air like a gunshot. "You're quitting?" someone asked. He nodded slowly. "If this is what the job's become, then yes. I didn't sign up to babysit a diva." A ripple went through the room. People exchanged nervous glances. Some looked relieved, others terrified. Because if the director walked, the show would implode. And all eyes turned to Wendell Pierce, the one person in that room who might still have influence over her. "Wendell," the showrunner said softly, "maybe you can talk to her. You two have history." Pierce rubbed his temples, torn. He had defended her for years, even when it cost him credibility. But now, he wasn't sure she'd listen. Still, he nodded. "I'll try." He found her later that afternoon, in her trailer. She was scrolling through her phone, hair and makeup done, sipping green juice. "Wendell," she said without looking up. "I'm not late, am I?" "No," he said, closing the door behind him. "But we need to talk." She finally looked up, her expression curious but guarded. "What's wrong?" He hesitated. "You know what's wrong." She set her phone down. "If this is about Mark, I already heard. He's overreacting. He's walking out," Pierce said. That caught her attention. "What?" "He's quitting. He says he can't work under these conditions anymore." Her eyes narrowed. "Because of me?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. She laughed softly, shaking her head. "Unbelievable. You all act like I'm the problem when I'm just the only one who cares about doing things right." "Doing things right shouldn't make people miserable," Wendell said gently. She folded her arms. "You think I'm being unreasonable. I think you've forgotten how to be kind." That stung. Her face tightened. "You sound just like them." "I'm not them," he said quietly. "I'm the one who's been on your side since day one." There was a pause. For a moment, he thought she might soften. But instead, she rose to her feet, her tone cold. "You don't understand what it's like to be me, Wendell. The pressure, the eyes, the expectations. One mistake, and they'll destroy me." He met her gaze. "Then stop helping them do it." For the first time, she looked shaken. He turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "The man you just pushed out, he believed in you. We all did. Don't let that be what people remember." He left her trailer without another word. Inside, Meghan stood still for a long time, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She looked perfect, flawless makeup, flawless hair, flawless smile. But beneath the reflection, she saw something else. Fear. Still, she didn't go after him. By the next morning, the news had spread. Mark Hastings was gone. The studio released a bland statement about creative differences, but everyone knew the truth. The director had given an ultimatum and lost. The atmosphere on set changed overnight. Meghan's authority, once whispered about, was now undeniable. She had survived the storm, and in Hollywood, survival meant victory. Or so she thought, because power, once tasted, is never enough. With Mark gone, Meghan began exerting more control than ever. She questioned scripts, vetoed creative choices, even demanded her own say in casting guest stars. She wasn't just the lead actress anymore, a producer said later. She was the showrunner in all but title. At first, the studio tolerated it. After all, the ratings were strong. Fans adored her. The Meghan Markle brand was still golden, at least to the outside world. But inside the set, it was suffocating. She didn't trust anyone, said a sound engineer. Every note felt like a test. Every conversation felt like walking a tightrope. And the irony was brutal. The woman who had once fought for equality, kindness, and empowerment now ruled with an iron smile. Wendell Pierce began to withdraw. He showed up, did his scenes, and went home. The warmth between them had frozen solid. I couldn't recognize her anymore, he said later. It was like watching someone wear a mask that wouldn't come off. Then came the moment that would seal her reputation. A confrontation between Meghan and the new director, a woman named Fiona Ray, known for her no-nonsense approach. The two clashed from day one. Fiona was meticulous, blunt, and unimpressed by celebrity. On my set, she told everyone, respect goes both ways. That didn't sit well with Meghan. Their first argument happened over a single camera angle. Fiona wanted a wider shot. Meghan wanted a close-up. It ruins the emotion, Meghan argued. It tells the story, Fiona countered. I am the story, Meghan said. Everyone froze. Fiona just stared at her. You're part of it. Not all of it. The tension between them grew with each episode. Meghan's frustration boiled over during a late shoot, when Fiona called for a retake after Meghan flubbed a line. I don't need another take, Meghan snapped. Fiona replied calmly. Yes, you do. Meghan glared at her. You're not my boss. Fiona didn't flinch. Right now I am. The air crackled. Crew members exchanged worried glances. Wendell, standing nearby, could feel the old dread return, the one he'd felt when everything first started unraveling. Meghan clenched her fists, voice trembling with anger. You'll regret that, she said. Fiona simply turned to the camera team. Reset for another take. That night, rumors spread like wildfire. Some said Meghan had stormed off set again. Others claimed she had called the network directly to complain. No one knew exactly what was said behind closed doors, but by the next week, Fiona was gone, quietly replaced by another director. And for the first time, the crew didn't hide their resentment. One grip muttered under his breath, she's untouchable. Another replied, for now. Because even in Hollywood, every empire built on fear eventually falls. Meghan didn't know it yet, but her downfall had already begun. Her behavior wasn't just hurting morale anymore. It was reaching the executives. Emails were being forwarded. Complaints were piling up. The studio's lawyers were quietly stepping in. And somewhere, someone decided to start documenting everything. The emails, one insider later said, were what changed everything. Because buried in those messages were details, small at first, but damning when pieced together. Notes about late arrivals. Reports of outbursts. Anonymous testimonies from crew members who felt bullied or dismissed. And when those emails leaked outside the studio, it wasn't gossip anymore. It was evidence. And the world was about to see the version of Meghan Markle that Hollywood had been hiding for years. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. When the world first saw Meghan Markle walking beside Prince Harry, smiling for the cameras, glowing under that unmistakable royal aura, it looked like a fairy tale. A Hollywood actress marrying into the most powerful monarchy on earth. What could be more cinematic? But for those who knew her from the Suits set, that smile didn't look like happiness. It looked like victory, because Meghan didn't just fall in love with a prince. She ascended into a role she had been rehearsing for years. Wendell Pierce remembered the day he heard the news. He was at home, sipping coffee, when his phone buzzed. A text from a former crewmate read simply, "She did it." He knew exactly who she was, and what it meant. He turned on the TV, and there she was, Meghan Markle, standing next to Prince Harry in the gardens of Kensington Palace, announcing their engagement. Her voice was soft, refined, carefully measured. Every gesture was polished, every smile deliberate. "I'm just so happy," she said. He's the one. But for Pierce, something about it didn't sit right. It wasn't the love that bothered him. It was the performance. She was acting, he said later. You could see it in her eyes. She wasn't Rachel Zane anymore. She was auditioning for Duchess. Hollywood and royalty had finally collided. And for Meghan, that collision wasn't a culture shock. It was a coronation. At first, everyone on the Suits set was thrilled. Patrick J. Adams tweeted, "She found her prince. Love always wins." Sarah Rafferty posted hearts. The studio released a statement congratulating her. But behind the scenes, something else was happening. Within days of the engagement, NDAs were tightened. Crew members were told to avoid discussing Meghan in interviews. Studio PR teams began scrubbing mentions of on-set conflict. Photos were removed, statements retracted. She was being rebranded, said one producer. They wanted her history spotless. The palace didn't want an actress with baggage. They wanted a modern fairy tale. And the price of that fairy tale? Silence. People who had worked with her for years suddenly couldn't speak her name publicly. When journalists called asking for stories about Meghan the colleague, the standard answer was, "She was lovely to work with." But Wendell Pierce couldn't bring himself to lie. When a British outlet reached out, he declined to comment. Later, he admitted, "I wasn't going to feed the myth, but I wasn't ready to fight it either." The palace was already rewriting her story. In the official narrative, Meghan was a humble American girl thrust into royalty. A humanitarian, a feminist, a woman of the people. But to the Suits crew, she was the woman who once made a camera operator cry. Still, the transformation was breathtaking. Overnight, Meghan went from TV actress to global symbol. Fashion houses sent her gowns. Politicians praised her poise. Even Hollywood's elite, once dismissive, began calling her "Your Royal Highness" half-jokingly at events. She was finally getting the validation she always wanted, said a friend from Toronto. But she didn't seem happy. She seemed obsessed. Obsessed with perfection, with control, with image. Even Wendell noticed it. She had stopped returning his texts months before the wedding. But when they briefly reconnected through a mutual contact, her tone was different, formal, distant. "It's been quite a journey," she wrote. "I'm learning to navigate new expectations." He replied, "Just don't lose yourself." She never responded. As the royal machine consumed her, the stories from her past began to fade, until one resurfaced. A British tabloid unearthed whispers of her on-set reputation. Anonymous sources spoke of her temper, her ego, her manipulations. The story hinted at disagreements with cast and crew, but the palace PR team moved fast. The narrative was spun into something else: jealousy. She was targeted because she was ambitious, because she was different, the headlines read. It worked. For a while, the public saw Meghan as the outsider, the woman brave enough to challenge centuries of royal tradition. But in Hollywood, the people who knew her weren't buying it. "She didn't challenge power," said one Suits staffer. "She became it." Still, even as the world watched her wedding in awe, even as billions tuned in to see her walk down the aisle, those who had known her best felt something uneasy stirring. "She wasn't the same," Wendell said. "The woman standing next to Prince Harry wasn't the woman I knew. Her eyes were different, harder." He wasn't invited to the ceremony. Only a handful of Suits cast members were. Patrick J. Adams went, but his smile and photos looked strained. When asked about it later, he said, "I was happy for her, but I felt like I didn't belong there." The truth was, none of them did. Hollywood and royalty may share cameras and glamour, but their worlds are built on opposite currencies. Hollywood thrives on reinvention. The crown survives on tradition. And Meghan, caught between them, tried to master both. But her old patterns followed her. At first, the palace adored her energy. She brought fresh life into the monarchy. But soon, whispers began again, this time not from a film set, but from royal staff. Assistants left. Schedulers resigned. Reports of shouting matches and late-night emails filled the tabloids. "She's difficult," insiders said. "She's demanding. She's impossible." To Wendell, it sounded all too familiar. It was like déjà vu, he said. The same stories, just a bigger stage. The crew from Suits texted each other quietly, almost guiltily. "She hasn't changed," one wrote. "She's just upgraded her audience." But not everyone turned on her. Some defended her fiercely. "She's just under pressure," one cast member said. "She's doing what she's always done, fighting for control." And maybe that was true. Maybe control was her armor. Because behind the glamour of palaces and tiaras, Meghan's smile began to fade again. Cameras caught her looking tense, isolated, uneasy. For all her power, she was alone. The irony was brutal. The woman who once demanded control now lived under the world's harshest microscope. Every outfit, every gesture.